I never grew up with games like Tony Hawk. The other kids and I never played it either, but we all collectively knew it was cool, because Tony Hawk is immortal, and Eric Sparrow is actual Satan. Thinking back on it, my parents were worried that anything even mildly realistic could potentially scar my adolescent mind, or, at the very least, encourage me to do something stupid. Keep in mind that when I made enough money to buy games for myself, I never told my parents, but there were definitely signs. Maybe they were onto something. Released in 2022, Rollerdrome is a game that I've mispronounced more times than I'd like to admit. It's like a mashup of all the games I wasn't allowed to play when I was a kid, without it feeling like all those elements were haphazardly thrown into a blender. That's why it's a real shame that it took so long for me to get around to this game, because Roll 7 was shut down not too long ago, and not long after Rollerdrome hit 1 million in player numbers. It's a real kick in the pants, wherever they are. I just hope they're doing better. So without further ado, let's get into it. The year is 2030, and roller rink blood sports run wild in the minds of the public. After being acquired by the Matterhorn megacorporation, the next Rollerdrome Championship competition is underway, with the top picks being 2029 champion Morgan Frey and potential runner-up Casper Ix. We are newcomer Kara Hassan, and before we can even think about squaring off at the top, we gotta make it from the very bottom. But while suiting up for our next match, we actually get a message from the previous champ, welcoming us to the circuit, but also warning us that the sport has changed. And that's about it for a while. We get ready to play in a cool-ass transition. Rollerdrome itself is very light with the story, so you're free to ignore it. But honestly, some of this world building is actually pretty interesting. And I mean in the Paul Verhoeven kind of interesting, in that it's equally funny and horrifying just how much it sucks to live here. With the popularity of Rollerdrome, the only job opening for those that are underqualified is to get into an arena filled with live ammunition and top-of-the-line military technology, armed with nothing but a stick and some hockey pads. But don't you worry, we here at Matterhorn treat our house players right, with good benefits, a competitive salary, and if you can survive 3 years working in a literal war zone, you even get free education. What kind? Don't you worry about that. Just put all that energy into living that long. Oh, and if for whatever reason you, let's say, expire in the ring, there'll be a huge payout for your next of kin. It's the least we could do. Despite the premise, the actual environments are a lot cleaner than I'd expect. We're rocking that roller rink aesthetic, with coloring that reminds me of 1980s home decor of all things. It makes sense that the esteemed entertainment of the future wouldn't want to look like the streets of Neo Detroit. But even with all that, there aren't any advertisements for Rollerdrome merchandise or starch cola. I'd expect that stuff to be plastered all over due to it being a sporting event. There's even a stage within a mall and there's, like, nothing. I guess the idea was to not distract the player with colorful background details, because the game can get pretty hectic without them. It just makes the arenas feel a bit more sterile. It feels like the dedicated story segments tell you all there is to know about the world, but the actual arena is just strictly gaming and nothing more to observe. But my critique is also praise, as the lack of these elements could imply something even more horrifying. Maybe the audiences of Rollerdrome are so laser focused on the action that it's all they care about, and the lack of background details is Matterhorn capitalizing on this. Compared to modern sports ball where advertisements and corporate sponsors help jingle the keys to keep people engaged. The crowds of Rollerdrome don't need Terry Tate to threaten them with a good time. They're in it for the passion, solely for their sadistic pleasure. Their urges only fulfilled by focused, unfiltered blood sport. It's a comically serious premise that wouldn't be out of place in a 70s action movie, only made funnier by Kara's stone-faced expression. There's a lot less to talk about when it comes to the sound. The weapons themselves are serviceable, with the big standout being tied to mechanics with an element of timing, making every action action have a slight echo in bullet time, and the shotgun making a pretty satisfying noise when you hit the slug shot. I have a similar lukewarm reception when it comes to the music. It's electronic, upbeat synthwave that sounds like it came out of Kung Fury, but unfortunately suffers when you're replaying stages, as whether you want to check off all the challenges or simply because you failed and needed to restart, it seems to cycle between the same 3 tracks. So, if you screw up, you'll be getting way more familiar with the soundtrack than you may have wanted to. And some of the best combat tracks are remixes of the already existing songs that are only unlocked after beating the game once. But if my biggest compliments towards the music is that saying it's a different flavor of meh, then that should say a lot. On the other hand, the music outside of combat can be pretty foreboding, like there's more beneath the surface. When playing, the first thing you're going to notice is how weird it feels to control Kara. But controlling Kara is less like moving her in a cardinal direction and more like steering a car. It's one of those things that's a bit awkward at the start, but it gets easier with experience. I'm a real fan of how Rollerdrome teaches the player about certain things, because tutorials aside, through playing you get optional challenges per level, and then the game surprises you by saying, hey, that dodge you got? It also enhances your bullet time and increases your damage during slowdown. Or it says, hey, dome this fool, while wall running. You're given basic knowledge about gunning, grinding, and doing tricks, but Rollerdrome has a bunch of tiny little moments that make the player go, I can do that? Rollerdrome does just enough on both the shooting and the skating to not make you tired of either, or bog you down with too many mechanics. Like look at the guns, you get 4 in total, but this isn't a twitch shooter. All your guns share a singular ammo pool. 1 grenade is half of your clip, the same as 6 pistol shots or 3 shotgun shells. So how do you get more ammo? By doing 6 stunts, flips, tricks, and any move that gets the judges hyped enough to give you more bullets. This means doing the same trick multiple times not only gives you less points, but also refills your ammo at a slower rate. There needs to be variety in your moves, so pay attention. The name of the game is keeping up your momentum. Down your opponents to keep up your multiplier, vary up your tricks to up your score, and supply your guns. It's a good gameplay loop. The UI also does a good job of communicating where an attack is coming from. The melee-focused enemies have large windups, and even ranged enemies have an indicator that tells you when it's a good time to dodge. Hey, wait a minute. Manual bullet time that gets enhanced with a defensive mechanic, a large move list that encourages variety while being stylish, and you're even gunning it like John Woo. This is like if Tony Hawk Underground and Max Payne birthed something that was dangerously close to a character action game.
Let's dance! Nice try! Bingo! So close! Is that all? Bye-bye! Perfect!
Yet despite how cool this game can be, after the opening stages, the training wheels get ripped off real quick. Knowing what enemy to prioritize is paramount to not having your screen filled with more spam than Dust Bowl. While it may be advantageous to stop that one annoying mob in the back of the map, more often than not, using them as a means to trigger Super Reflex can be even more beneficial. It's important to have good environmental awareness, not only for your ammo, but also for your opposition. And on the topic of Super Reflex, relying only on it as the metaphorical green light to dispatch enemies can be very limiting, and makes the overall experience drag a bit in terms of pacing. Cause variety is the name of the game, baby. In terms of critique, the game is pretty short, and even without replaying older ones to get all the challenges, the backgrounds of the stages get recycled a few times. And in the late game, that's when it can get a bit overwhelming. Appropriately, the last 3 stages are when the difficulty spikes the hardest, and it's all due to these 2 shits right here yucking it up in the back, because good god, I love area denial in my game about going fast. I love enemies that punish you for not killing them on your first pass. I love spamming the pistols so much my carpal tunnel flares up. It reminds me of Dota 2. But in all fairness, there is counterplay to these things. Despite the low number of stages, no threat really sneaks up on you. The early rounds are meant to get you familiar with certain mobs, and a big enough arena to experiment with your toys. Rockets can be shot out of the air, making the pistols good for clearing spam. The pistols also have the best stopping power when it comes to dealing with the poly beam, so you just have to find out where they are and use Super Reflex to take them out. And the Z11. 11, a late game weapon that's hands down the best gun in the game. It's the closest thing you have to a sniper rifle, and because location-based damage doesn't exist, it can one-tap any common enemy in the game that isn't a robot. Don't let my bitterness convince you otherwise, because even though the endgame makes my blood pressure shoot to the moon, the game isn't unfair. The last thing to cover would be the story, and even though Rollerdrome ends way sooner than I thought it would, if you want to be spoiler-free, then go to here. At the start of every circuit, you're dropped into a story section, and while we could just move straight to the arena, we're gonna do what every first-person silent protagonist does, invade everyone's privacy. Tensions are brewing, as a newspaper explains that the Matterhorn Corporation is not only in the process of privatizing the London police force, but using the Rollerdrome Championship as an opportunity to show off their military-grade tech. While the sport wasn't exactly safe to begin with, from our first-hand experience, Matterhorn's changes seem to dial up the lethality to an 11, and unfortunately, we only ever hear about major developments through snippets like this, and it follows Matterhorn's struggle with the New Action Army, a sort of political group that opposes Matterhorn at every turn, and a group they're doing their best to silence. As early as the quarterfinals, Morgan sends us another note saying that Matterhorn is out to destroy us, implying that the competitors that don't move up in the bracket don't leave the arena at all, because some in the competition have ties to the New Action Army. This also explains why they have Ed 209 running around. Matterhorn can write up any casualties as an entertaining but unfortunate accident, and the New Action Army loses their leg up against Matterhorn. So what about Casper Ix? Out of all the contestants, he seems to be the most complacent, as he makes passes at Kara and earns his name, because he's giving me the ick. You'd think he'd also be worried about his own safety, but it turns out the reason why he's even considered to be a frontrunner for the championship is because he's been in Matterhorn's pocket the whole time. While he was probably a skilled skater in the Rollerdrome circuit, we've seen those more talented than him lose their lives in the ring. Not only is he willing to play ball with Matterhorn, he'll roll over if given the command. He's their figurehead, plain and simple, and as you climb the ranks, you're becoming an even bigger thorn in his side, since if he doesn't win the championship, his position, the fame, it'll all go to the underdog, the rookie, of all people. And you know what? Even though I didn't finish all the challenges, I got everything that mattered. Kara wins the championship. Roll credits. Wait, that's it? Now here's what I find interesting. For all intents and purposes, Kara is just an observer. She's our lens into this dystopian world, which we unfortunately don't see too much of. There's good world building sprinkled throughout, but the story ends quite abruptly, and we honestly don't know much about Kara Hassan other than how much money she spent on getting into the competition. But maybe that's the point. She doesn't comment on the dangerous nature of the sport. She shows little to no interest towards supporting the New Action Army or Matterhorn itself, only making a passing remark on how Casper is a sore loser. But as I talked earlier when discussing the audience's passion for blood sports, what if Kara Hassan is the same, with the only difference being that she's capable of actually claiming the title for herself? Maybe her blank slate of a character is meant to speak more about her single-minded drive to win above all else. Matterhorn is functionally the company. It's OCP, Weyland-Yutani, different name, same game. But the most interesting thing is honestly because the story doesn't go anywhere. Does anyone important speak out against Matterhorn? Does the New Action Army get squashed? I don't know. But Kara gets her trophy, and that's it. From her perspective, she has no motivation to go against Matterhorn after usurping their poster boy. She has no stake in the beef with the New Action Army, and people in her very position have tried to speak out, and the only thing they got was a spot in the nearest Matterhorn branded casket. She even makes the sport more dangerous in the post-game, Out for Blood, to keep the audience is entertained. Ultimately, the whole political issue with Matterhorn and their business ventures to take over London is way beyond someone of Kara's position, even as the new champion. So, she'll do what the last guy did, and play ball. I'm easily drawn to more unorthodox ideas when it comes to playing games, and to me, Rollerdrome is an easy recommend. I have some gripes with the presentation and the story, because on a surface level it's kinda lacking, but honestly, Rollerdrome is its gameplay, and it does its job when it comes to the Tony Hawk arena shooter with Max Payne bullet time. But my biggest problem is that, while the stages are good for what they are, it feels over and done with so quickly. It took me like 4 hours to beat this game. After the main campaign, you do get the Out for Blood mode, which acts like your New Game Plus, since it adds harder enemies in earlier stages, but that's about it. But honestly, if I'm complaining that there isn't enough of a game, I can't really say there's a lot of flaws here. Maybe if there was workshop support or maybe some challenge maps added in the future, and Oh, right. I try to avoid talking about this kind of stuff because I assume you're here to learn about the game itself. I got really lucky with Signalis because that whole debacle with Unity didn't actually go through. But it can be hard to actually recommend buying Rollerdrome because Roll 7 doesn't actually get any of your money. Take-Two does. So would I recommend playing Rollerdrome? Yes. Should you buy it? No. Do what you will with that information. Thanks for watching. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go back in the basement to play more TF2 on Wi-Fi that rivals the McDonald's next door. Take care of yourselves, and see you next time.